to dive into our conversation for today's anti-racist art class. Our person that we're going to be focusing on today, who I've been realizing I knew next to nothing about, and that is Frederick Douglass. And I feel like I would be amiss if today, the day before our country's Independence Day, we didn't discuss what it means to celebrate independence, that the phrase in our Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, these beautiful values that we espouse as a country that to this day still have not actualized in the day-to-day life of minorities or people of color. So I'd like to kick off our lesson with a video, and I posted this in the group if you want to watch the full video, but this is only, we're just going to watch part of it. And this is the descendants of Frederick Douglass delivering his 4th of July speech. We're going to just listen to the part of Frederick Douglass's speech, but I recommend the whole thing because it's powerful what his kids say about it. And then we'll dive into our lesson.
Do I look there or there? Okay. My name is Alexa Ann Watson, and I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of
Frederick Douglass is my great-great-great-great-granddaughter
of Frederick Douglass.
I am the great-great-great-great-grandchild. I've been counting on my fingers since I was like 5.
This is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom.
Fellow citizens, I shall not presume to dwell at length on the associations that cluster about this day. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment.
With brave men, there's always a remedy for oppression. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary.
Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence?
Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us?
I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary.
Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common.
The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me.
The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine.
You may rejoice. I must mourn. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire.
It is not the gentle shower, but thunder.
We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake.
The feeling of the nation must be quickened.
The conscience of the nation must be roused.
The propriety of the nation must be startled.
The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed.
And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim.
To him, your celebration is a sham.
Your boasted liberty an unholy license.
Your national greatness, swelling vanity.
Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless.
Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence.
Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery.
Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings,
With all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him
mere bombast,
Fraud,
deception,
impiety.
and hypocrisy. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country.
Whew. So I think it's really important to show a different perspective of this holiday as we're working to broaden our perspective and to see the world through a colored lens in a way. And this speech really moved me and brought up a lot of ideas and thoughts. But I'd love to hear your initial reactions as well, if y'all would care to share.
I guess I'll start. I remember reading this speech when I was very young with what's it called? I did a wax museum in, I think it was like the third grade. You know, those type of reports. And I think I read this speech, or you know, like a I don't know, a watered down version of it. And I remember the conversation that I had with my mom about, you know, why. And it was, I don't know, it was just I'm just reliving that experience.
What was it for you, Zach, at that age?
What I remember is drawing from experiences of like seeing people inflict pain on each other and kind of normalizing, I think. Like it was, you know how there, I don't know, you go to the store and you see, like, if you see somebody who's like, you know, who's in a wheelchair, like you see somebody open a door for them and that's normalized. I think that this conversation, in effect, kind of helped me really understand the depths of slavery and how it was it was the nation's, I mean, now I have the words to better like describe it, but it was something that was so horrendously bad, right? And I mean, then our nation's biggest sin, as we call it now. I think it kind of just established in my brain that the slavery and the oppression of a people was real. It was real, and then there was I needed to be sensitive to it.
Well, thank you.
And there are two main things I want to make sure that we cover today, stemming from this conversation, and that's first of all just who was Frederick Douglass, super briefly, and that could be something that you could continue to study on your own. And then, as much as we talk about the abolishment of slavery, I'd like to suggest that slavery still does exist in our country by another name, you know, stealing from the title of that book, in the form of what's known as the prison industrial complex. And we'll just kind of briefly introduce that concept. I'll be posting some links to give you some more resources about that. But yeah, that's the conversation today. So I'm gonna pull up, while we first dive into a little bit about Frederick Douglass, this image of him. And I thought this was a really great inspiration for future anti-racist art classes, or, this is kind of something that reminds me, Judith, a little bit of like your illustrated notebooks. And I think it's a beautiful example of how we as artists can learn more about a certain subject, illustrate it, make it more engaging to study. So what I'd invite you to do as we talk is, if you like, you can, maybe you want to focus on, just the name and some of these, there's little informative blips if you want to make some notes. And I'm going to be doing my best to attempt to draw the portrait of Frederick Douglass. And for those of you who've been in my art classes before, which is all of you, you know that the very first thing we do when we sketch a portrait is, or anything, absolutely anything, is we start with the big shapes first. So what I've done, and this might look kind of backwards, I'm not sure, but I'm starting with big shapes of Frederick Douglass's head here. So I'm looking for the overall silhouette, and it took me like a few tries to kind of get the angles, kind of breaking that head shape into angles. You can see how it's kind of a curve at the top. We have a little cutout, negative space, little triangle here, and I shaped out the angles of the head. Then I'm going to be looking for guidelines such as, okay, he's got this line coming down that illustrates the part in his head. I'm noticing that the profile, his face is at 3/4 angle, but there's a line that's going to be the side of his face here within the beard. And I always start kind of looking for big shapes, and I like to break them up by angles. So if you want to go ahead and grab your sketchbook, you can either start drawing while we talk, or if you like, just, take notes, whatever feels right to you on this 3rd of July. So I'm still learning about Frederick Douglass, and what I thought was interesting is how, even though he's known as specifically an activist, an abolitionist, a former slave who then came out to, speak for equality and spoke directly with President Lincoln for in favor of abolition. He also was very much just a champion of equality and fairness for all. So because of his past as a slave, but also as a worker, he knew in person, like through his own experience, the challenges that not only slaves, but also the working class went through, and what was just an incredibly difficult time to be a laborer. So not only did he fight for abolition, he also fought for labor unions, for rights for workers. His second wife was a very fiery abolitionist, champion of women's rights and trying to gain the vote. And I think that's something that has inspired me recently. The more I learn, the Black community and Black leaders, time and time again throughout history, they lead the way, and they show us how to find the common ground between all people who are suffering, who are being mistreated, or whose rights are not equally represented. Basically, everyone who is not really getting that that opportunity for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that we said is what we're here for as a country when we staked out our independence against England. And what I think is so painful is that even though we declared our independence from the monarchy of England and, said we're going to do things differently, we just continued that, colonial, white supremacist, patriarchal tradition, and just changed the name of the government a little bit. But we're still not, if you look at the stats, we're still not the democracy that I think we strive to be with equal representation for all people. But yeah, so Frederick Douglass, after working as a slave, as a ship worker, he eventually became a model of, and it's so hard to even think about and say today, but for people of his time, there were people who couldn't even conceive that a Black person was the intellectual equal of white people. And whenever they heard him speak, whenever he would go on tours, he was a living, breathing example that, yes, Black people are human. They are just as intelligent. They are absolutely equal in every way. And so he was able to enlighten people to the fact that, you know, we should consider ending slavery. And so he was one of the biggest influences on Abraham Lincoln when he decided to allow Black people to fight in the Union Army in World War II.
Jessica, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did he get free?
I don't know, Carol. That would be good to.
Okay, I'll take it on.
Yeah, let us know what you find. Anybody else know anything more than I do? I'm definitely not an expert. I'm here to learn, just like we all are here. But any other insights about Frederick Douglass?
I mean, later in life, he was very close with Lincoln. I don't remember the. I mean, he was just an incredible political figure, and was. I don't know. I don't remember. I remember learning about him when I was 10 years old. I'm sorry. That's I guess the extent to.
Sure.
Yeah. No help.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Like, I don't know. I also don't remember much history at all from school. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. But I've kept hearing about him. Another person who I'm hoping we'll talk about soon, who I've been reading her quotes and realizing that I had no idea who this person was Angela Davis. And I'm still just learning a little bit about her. Yes, Judith.
So when Angela Davis was incarcerated, she was incarcerated across the street from the apartment building I lived in.
Oh, really?
I was on the third floor facing the jail, the Women's House of Detention, and her homies, her friends, would come down and late in the afternoon and call up to her the news of the neighborhood.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Wow. So you would get to listen in on that, or?
Yeah. The whole neighborhood heard it.
Whoa.
But I was right there. I mean, it literally was across the street from me, and I was on the third floor, so it was right near me.
Wow. So you were really like living history just right in it. That's cool. Yeah, so we'll have to talk more about her because I'm still learning, but we'll stick with her.
She's mentioned in that Toni Morrison documentary, All My Pieces. Toni Morrison helped her get her book out.
Ah.
What was the name of the documentary?
All My Pieces. It's on NPR.
All My
Pieces. P-I-E-C-E-S. Yeah. Very worth watching.
So the other big topic that I wanted to bring up today was this reality that we don't hear a lot about, which is the fact that in a different form, I would argue that slavery does still exist in the United States today, and it has shifted, it has evolved ever since the 13th Amendment was passed in many different forms, and its most recent iteration is the prison industrial complex. And for those of you who are familiar with like the background of slavery by another name and what happened in the Jim Crow South immediately after the slaves were freed, you'll know that even though the slaves were free, almost immediately there were a slew of different laws that were put into place that directly targeted these recently freed slaves. and there was a practice known as a peonage, in which there would be trumped up charges. For example, one of the most common things that a newly freed slave, or even in the decades after slavery, all through up until, wasn't until 1945 that things really started getting out of this system, was loitering. If you were a slave leaving your plantation, say you'd just been freed, and you're like, I'm gonna get to the north, and I'm gonna find myself a job, and I'm going to, make a new start for myself. They created a law that said that if you were wandering around and you didn't have a job, that was illegal. Now, of course, that meant that all of these people who, of course, didn't have jobs were automatically, going to be taken to court. And what would happen at the courthouse is that whether or not they were found to be guilty, there were court fees for even coming to court. So even if the guy could say, I do have a job, I work for so-and-so just down the street, they would say, oh, well, okay, well, so much for that. Here is your fee of, and a huge fee that they would have known would have been unreachable for that person. And there would always be, conveniently, a plantation owner or the owner of a coal mine, some big operation that had previously used slaves, who would say, hey, I will cover the fee for this person's court costs, and in exchange, he can work on my farm. He can work in my coal mine. He can work, at the molasses factory, at whatever place it was that they still wanted to exploit the free labor of people of color. And
Did they have a choice?
Of course, no. Like, you mean the Black people?
Did they have a choice of saying, I don't want to have him pay my fees, I'd rather spend time and work it off that way? Or
I think what would happen, and Zach and Carol, correct me because it's been a while since I've read the book, but if they decided to go to prison instead, then in the prisons and in the jails, that was another form of enforced labor.
Exactly. They would rent those prisoners out, Judith.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks. And that is actually, I'm so glad you asked, because that's exactly how the prison industrial complex as it exists today kind of morphed into what it is. So it became common practice because of this exact, situation, for prisons to become for-profit operations, where they would rent out their workers. They would rent out these incarcerated people who were not even, guilty of, or were being held on charges that were just completely ridiculous, to the big industrial, farms, whatever, of the time. And that's when things would get really murky. So it's just so painful and horrible to read, but in that book, Slavery by Another Name, they talk about how, how conveniently all records would be lost of these people who had been convicted and who were working in their places, and how that they were just lost. There was almost no written records. It was very difficult for people of color to get the education to write and express what was happening, or to record anything, or to bring attention to this situation. And unfortunately, it also seems that directly after the Civil War, there was this white apathy that sort of sunk even on the North, that people were exhausted for fighting for the end of slavery, that they just thought, okay, like, we just did all this for you people, we're just going to mind our own business now, and y'all can figure it out. Slavery's over, so everything is fixed. And unfortunately, that was really when things got even uglier, because the broken South then started taking out a lot of its rage and, the loss of the Civil War out on people of color, and in many cases, things got even worse for people who had been slaves, because now there was no longer, you know, you didn't own the slave. It wasn't in your interest to keep that person healthy and alive for a long time. And people began to be used up as if they were an expendable resource. And it was very, very ugly.
Can I just say one thing? My understanding of this whole thing, just as like a, I don't know, just a takeaway, macro takeaway, is that after the war, the resource of human, what's it called, energy, and the human life was monetized. Like it was turned into a something like an earning potential with a very very small cost.
Thank you for that. And that continues to this day. I'm going to be sharing some links with you in the Corps' website that talk about how in today's prison system, workers, I know at least in Texas, I think they make 50 cents an hour for the work that they're asked to do in the prisons. And the profit from the companies who employ the prison system, private prisons, these are private prisons, they make somewhere between like $30,000 to $40,000 per person who is incarcerated. And there's a huge contingent of lobbyists who work to make sure that there are crimes that are invented, if need be, or, you know, if we think about all of the stuff that's happening, all of the controversy around policing right now, you know, those police are doing what they've been told to do by these larger figures who work with the government to try and keep our prisons full. And I recently saw a statistic that even though I think, what is the US, like 4% of the world's population, we have 25% of the world's prison population. Our prison system is bloated. It is the biggest in the world. And of course, there's a disproportionate number of the amount of people of color and people in poverty who are in that system. And, you know, that's everything from Black people to immigrants. Basically, you know, anybody who has been disenfranchised, who is not a straight white, you know, person is often like going to be bearing the brunt of this prison industrial complex. So I'll be linking some more information about that. How are your portraits coming along?
Can we show them to you and you give us feedback?
Absolutely. Let me stop this screen share real quick.
So first, mine is very small.
Oh, nice. Hold it up just a little bit more. Excellent. Yeah. The nose really pops. I think his beard or his face shape needs to come down a little bit longer to get the jawline. You see how if we pop back to the picture, he's got a really square jaw, and then the beard grows out from that. So I just extend the jaw and the beard down a little bit more.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want a little feedback?
Oh, that's so good. Carol,
Wow.
so good.
Well, yeah, I can see, because I eyeballed it and did the shapes, but I can see that I think the relationship between the mouth and nose is a bit off. But I would have to do some more, careful.
Yeah, he's got a very square face. And just reading his Wikipedia page is really enlightening. Excellent work, Carol. And I like how you're starting to go in and add the darker lines around the eyes to kind of bring our attention there, you know, getting your value out.
Strong eyes. Whew. Well, the whole face is so strong.
It is, yeah. He was alive, of course, whenever the camera had been invented. Lucky us. So I was just really taken by what a powerful countenance he had. And if you look at the Wikipedia page, you'll see him, you know, in his 20s and as he continued to age, and just such a powerful presence even through the camera. So yeah, he was mixed race, so he was half or a black father and I think a white mother, and he was married to a black woman for over 20 years. And when she passed away, there was a big controversy storm when he married a white woman who was a very outspoken women's rights advocate. And he would say to that controversy, he was like, I married two women. One was the color of my mother and one was the color of my father. And, you know, he was just following his heart, of course, but you can imagine what a controversial storm that started in, you know, the mid 1800s. Anybody else want to show off your drawing? Ellie?
You see okay?
Yeah. Wow. Very nice. Oh, you really
those eyes look great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be so difficult to get the emotion and the expression of a person, but I think you really nailed it there. It's strong features, beautiful work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Please forget.
Frederick Douglass.
Well, listening to the speech, I felt, I don't know, every now and then I feel a compulsion to write music. And I actually wrote a piece instead.
Oh,
Ah,
will you play it for us later?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
wow, Zach.
Wow, that's amazing.
So Jessica, I apologize. I
Have a class.
say what?
You have to go?
No, that I wasn't drawing during this time.
Oh.
It was
You guys, what kind of art teacher do you think I am? I'm not a punitive person. You're making art, right?
Yeah, you're making your art. That's great.
yeah.
So
You're getting a lot of thumbs up, Zach.
yeah, and it speaks like the intersectionality between the arts. It's just like the intersectionality between different oppressed peoples. So, boom, there you go. Would you be willing to play that right now? Are you still working on it?
I could probably, yeah.
While he gets ready, I'll show off what I have so far. I've been too busy blabbing. But here's my Frederick Douglass so far.
Can you make it full screen? Ah, there it is. Wow,
Ooh,
beautiful.
Along.
that's, yeah, I love the way you went from the shape to the features, and now it feels like you'll like work out the in-between.
Right, yeah. I know if I just focus on getting that initial lay-in, then I don't have to worry about the proportions like working out later. I can just focus on things like texture and value and the details. So that's always important for me getting started. But I'm jealous I don't have charcoal. The original looks like it was drawn in charcoal, and there's so much richness. It's a wonderful medium for portraiture. And whenever you're ready, Zach, we're ready for you. He's practicing. But this is going to be a very thoughtful 4th of July, I think, for the whole world. I've already been hearing some really powerful pieces on NPR, and just, you know, the Frederick Douglass video we just watched was just released today. And one of the most powerful things I've heard so far is people saying like, well, are you celebrating 4th of July? Like how can we take this moment in history and apply it to this holiday? And what I heard that really resonated with me is the idea that we can't just write down on a piece of paper what we stand for as a country and pretend like that's what it's like and then argue like America is perfect. We must continue to like fight and to work toward living out those ideals, and that is the most patriotic thing that we can do, is to take action and to continue to work toward what we said we believed in as a country. We're still not there yet.
Does anyone know what Black Lives Matter is doing on July 4th?
I'm sure there'll be all kinds of different iterations and expressions of it, but no, I don't know particularly. You ready, Zach?
Wow.
Oh,
Zach, that was so powerful. I mean, the first part brought tears to my eyes. That was really powerful.
Thank you.
thank you, Zach.
It's incredible how you can really tell a story through music, and that was so perfect for today. Whew. Well, my friends, I think we can't follow that. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing your art form, Zach. Thank you all for being a part of this conversation. I encourage you to all continue your research and share what you find in the group. And just thank you all so much for being here.
Is the
Thank
Frederick
you.
Douglass the whole speech on the Mighty Network?
I posted that full video in the Anti-Racist Art Classes group. The actual full Frederick Douglass speech is on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay.
The coda is worth listening to because that's the young people who gave the speech talking about their present day feelings about the 4th and
I'll definitely listen.
our country.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Hugs to everyone. So special being together.
Yes.
That's
Take
a good
so
one.
much care. Big virtual hugs. Adios, y'all.